We're live. It is 7:30. I'm getting a little bit of a late start, but it's still, it's morning. Time to get stuff done. Time to get up. Time to get going. Today we're going to talk about don't be that guy. Obviously, all the time I get comments about people complaining about things. That's just part of being the internet. That's if you're doing anything, if you're in the public eye, not that I am, but if you're in politics or if you have involved in any way in social media, your comment, you're posting, you're doing whatever, what is out there seems to be people's fascination. I think that this is probably human nature, but their fascination with telling you what you did wrong. And the thing that you have to realize is that if you have somebody watch a video in this case, or watch your post that you made, your little video clip or whatever that you did, and there's 100,000 people that saw it and didn't say anything about it, you can pretty much assume that those guys saw it and liked it, at least enough to watch it. And then there'll be 5 people or whatever, or 10 or 20 or whoever it is, that want to feel it as their cause, their calling to interject something. And the interesting thing about this is, when you're having a conversation with somebody and somebody says, hey, look, here is has a constructive way of doing this. They're like, hey, here's another way to think about this. Instead of doing this, could you try this? That's a good thing. That's helpful. That's the great thing about getting, and that's one of the things I love about being down at West Tech, is that there's, 5 or 6 really sharp guys down there. And even if you just had 5 or 6 guys that have different eyes on something, on a project or something you're trying to fix or overcome, having that many people view it is a fantastic thing, because everybody views a project or a problem or an opportunity from a different perspective. We all bring different things to the table, because even if you have 5 or 6 people that watch a traffic accident and you get a report from all of those 5 or 6 people, you'll get 5 or 6 different viewpoints of that, because we all bring our own experiences and biases and things like that, obviously, to a description like that. Some people are much better at describing it. Some people are much more analytical. Some people are much more emotional, all of those things. But when you're trying to solve a problem, that's really good, because what happens is, if you're anything like me, you get kind of fixated on, this is the path I'm going down. This is there's something that I'm missing. I must figure out what the situation is, and I'm going down this path to try to solve it. And somebody else looks at it completely differently, and they're like, hey, why don't you just try this? I'm like, man, why didn't I think about that? And that's fantastic. There's that, which is a very, very positive thing. One of a recent comment that I got on I did a story for the guys at Summit about testing one of their bigger cams, a stage 3 or stage 4 that we ran, I think, on a 5.3, and we ran a big turbo on it. And we didn't turn the turbo all the way up, because that's a very common mistake or misunderstanding that people have, is that if you're a guy that's like a dedicated drag racer, your thing is, I'm going to put this turbo on and I'm going to make all the power that turbo can make. That's great. If that's the thing that you're looking for, that's one way to approach it. What we get wrong more often than not is that we think that our way, whether it's mine or yours or theirs or who's ever, that's the only way. That's the 100% correct way. And anybody else that could think differently than us obviously is wrong. Obviously, that carries over into religion and politics and everything else in the world. That's incorrect. My view is no better than everybody else's view. It's just different. And that's the thing that we need to realize, is that people have different viewpoints, and that however strongly you feel about a Boss 302, another guy might feel equally strong about a DZ 302. And the thing that we miss is that, guess what? Both of those things can be right. But the comment that they made was, well, I did this test, and I did this test. I think I did this test, if I remember correctly, One, as always, is to show that every cam is a turbo cam. You can even put a big cam, which would probably be kind of a mistake and a mismatch, in my opinion, on putting it in a small motor like that and then putting a turbo on it. It's to show, one, that it works. Whatever we start with, we add boost to that, and it works. It always does that with any camshaft. The other thing is to show that you can run lower boost with a big turbo. That also works. But I think the real reason behind this thing was to demonstrate a good way to make a lot of power at low boost. And the way that you do that, the process for that, is you make as much NA power as you can, which means on an LS, putting a good size cam in it. It gets up near basically the available piston to valve clearance that you have. So if you're wanting to maximize power at the lowest boost level, which is, look, another way to do it, not the turn the boost all the way up way, it's a different way. But if you wanted to run as much power as you can, let's say at 7 pounds or 10 pounds, you could pick your number, whatever that is, you want to maximize the NA power. So you put a big camshaft in it, put ported heads on it, put a good like fast intake manifold on it, optimize that combination, try to get it, in our case of a 5.3, try to get it as close to 500 NA horsepower as you can, because that seems to be kind of where those things will end up when we've done head scam and intake on an otherwise kind of junkyard short block. You make that power level. Then when you add boost from almost anything, a good turbo, in this case it was a S475, I think, and then you have a good intercooler, you run E85 on it. Then when you multiply that out and you add a certain amount of boost to it, the power gains that you get are going to be much greater than had you just started with a stock one. Yeah, you could turn the boost up and make more power with more boost. That is one way. But the other way, the way that was demonstrated, and the thing is that on that particular test, it's not like that's the only time I've ever run a turbo on a 5.3 or the only cam I've ever run a turbo on a 5.3. But yet what people end up doing is they interject not just a comment on what happened, but they make up a scenario. Well, I wouldn't have picked that camshaft. You know, I wouldn't have picked. I would have turned that turbo all the way up, and I wouldn't have picked that. I wouldn't have done that camshaft because I would have picked a smaller camshaft. You know, and they're they decide what I did and why I did it, and then they make up an imaginary scenario basically, and then it's like they didn't even watch the video or listen to what I was saying, and then they get to complain about that. But they know that they can't complain, they can't make their case against that unless they make my point for me, my incorrect point for me. And the important part about all of this is, why would somebody go to the trouble of all of that just so that they could complain about it? You don't want to be that guy. Life shouldn't be about you going on the internet or talking to your group of friends or being in a big group of people or whatever, solely so that you can put others down and complain about it. It doesn't bother me. Obviously, I've been doing this for a really long time, and going in, you have to know that that's all part of it. I find it very interesting, and obviously it gives me information to have discussions on live feeds or to talk to other people about, because all of the information is good. It's just that that shouldn't be your existence. You shouldn't be the guy. And this seems to be, unfortunately for us as people who are on the internet and are dealing with other automotive enthusiasts and stuff, it's a great community, and the vast majority of people are not like that. But the ones that populate the comment sections are those people. Like I said, so if you look at a video that somebody posted, there could be tens or hundreds or hundreds of thousands of views, and the number of comments relative to the people that had relative to the number of views is very, very small. But those are the vocal minority. Those are the people that are insecure or unhappy with their life or whatever their deal is, that feel it is their duty to, even if something isn't wrong, to manufacture something that's wrong and then complain about that. But I thought it was awesome, if for no other reason than because I hadn't done it in a while, and I was starting to feel left out, and I was looking at my wrong cam t-shirts and thinking, man, it's come a long way, which is a good thing, because people are, I think, starting to, and even some of the manufacturers are coming to grips with the fact that, hey, if we make a cam and it does this with the centrifugal blower, and it does this with a roots blower, and it does this with an NA blower. They're starting to rethink the way that they view camshafts, which is kind of what I was trying to do. I'm changing the industry. And people are starting to realize that. And so I haven't been able to state my wrong cam thing in a long time, because I used to get that all the time. Every test that I did, it was just a string of, I mean, whether it was NA or turbo or blower, whatever it was just like, you just picked the wrong cam for that, because it was the mindset that there has to be a dedicated cam for that centrifugal blower to make that centrifugal blower shine. No, there's just an NA cam that, or any cam that does what the NA curve does, and then you add boost to that. They don't realize that's coming around, and that kind of that stifled a lot of the comments, or cured people of making these comments about, oh, that's just definitely the wrong camshaft. And so I was feeling a little left out for my wrong cam shirts and for my wrong cam comments. And then so it was nice to finally get one there. I was like so happy. The guy has no idea how happy he made me that I got to post my wrong cam comment, and now I can proudly wear my shirt again, that knowing that there are wrong cam people out there still to this day, which is awesome. Let me know what projects you guys have gotten done. I unfortunately didn't get my project done that I promised I was going to get done yesterday. I did not get the cams off yesterday, and so as soon as I get off here and decide what my next video is going to be, because I have to do that in the morning to make sure that I know what my process is going to be, then I'm going to unbolt those camshafts and talk to the guys at Schneider about sending the cams in and see how much bigger we can get. I'm also going to take a look at Forward Motion, or one of these 2.2 turbo guys also has camshafts. So I want to see what they are. I want to see if they have roller cams or slider cams, and see how much bigger they are. I'm curious to see. I've seen online a lot of the information on these 2.2 camshafts, all of the factory specs, and then some of the like Super 60 stuff and stuff. But the numbers that they're given, I'm not sure where they're taking them at. They're not 50 numbers. So maybe they're advertised numbers. And if they are advertised numbers, what is the starting point? Is it 6,000s? Where is their measuring point? I know it's all relative, and I can look at it and go, this one is this much more. But I need to know what the starting point is, so that I can then kind of back calculate 50 numbers, which is kind of how I understand the camshafts. Because like I said, I'm not sure how they're measuring them, but I want to find that out. And then I want to find out how much bigger the guys from Schneider can make these cams, so I know which ones to send them to start with. I'm thinking that maybe the NA cams would be the best ones to send them. Have them get them a set of either the early carbureted cams or the tune or the throttle body injected NA cams, because I found a place that shows the cam timing for the NA cam and for the turbo cam. The turbo cams are certainly milder than that, and as we know, if it makes more power NA, it's going to make more power under boost. And so that's why I want to try all those cams, and I want to get 3 or 4 or 5 at least to test. So we'll test maybe the smallest turbo cam, and then maybe the biggest turbo cam, and then the NA cam, and then a couple of aftermarket cams. Because I have some that I would like to try. I would like to specifically try dual pattern cams, and something bigger, something in the 220 to maybe 230 range. I know that guys are saying that, oh, well, these things don't run much RPM, especially on a 2.5. But in order to make power, and if we can get the head flow and the intake runner length right, they can make power at 6,500 RPM or so. So it would be interesting to see. Let's see, how should our poll be for today? So somebody helped me come up with a poll idea for this morning. Didn't really complete anything, just got a couple jugs of E85. That's good. Working on a Turbo Fox body, 3D scanning T5, and stock blocks to do CAD simulation. Are you having to build something? Is that why you're doing CAD modeling? I bought a digital crank sensor degree and cams, accurate down to 1/10 of a degree, linked it to a laptop with a digital dial indicator. Well, that would be good. Exactly like a cam doctor, only different, only better and superior in every way, according to the internet. Let's see. Okay, so the question for the poll for this morning is, should I do a big bang on the early? I have a 1984 Dodge 2.2 liter turbo motor with a small head bolts. Should I do a big bang on that one? I want to do testing on it, and I want to do it with the small head bolts because I want to see how limiting those really are. But should I do a big bang on that motor? And maybe if I do, should I put the bigger head bolts in it, or obviously a head studs or something in it? So let me know about the turbo. That I see that one kind of as a disposable motor, but I want to get a lot of data from it before if I did let it go, before we let it go. I have a small but Chevy 327 with a comp 305 cam, and it seems way over cam. That you'd need a lot of other stuff to take advantage of a 305 camshaft. That's really big for a small block Chevy. Unless you have really big cylinder heads and single plate intake and lots of compression, and you're running the thing to like 7,500 or 8,000. Chad's in the house. What's up, my man? Dude, I called you a couple times from the road to see what was up. I was on a road trip, man. I was going to have you meet me up in Ohio. And so you could come catch snakes with me and come live the 2.2 Dodge Omni Turbo life and every other turbo combination that they had there. Dan's in Portugal. Dave, all you have to do is take a look at the specs on the turbo cams. There are turbo cams. They make turbo cams and they work on a turbo. But the thing is, so does every other camshaft. Every cam, every head, every intake manifold, they all work under boost. Every one of them. And stop thinking about it as a turbo cam. Look what this cam does versus this cam to your power curve of your NA motor. Whatever that does it lose power down low and make more power at the top? Does it make more power everywhere? Does it lose more power everywhere? Whatever that combination of the two cams is, whatever change that makes to the NA power curve, that's what it's going to do under boost. A turbo cam will not make your motor run better with the turbo than it does NA. It's only going to multiply whatever is there from the NA combination. I love the way David Vizard views specs on camshafts. He has an interesting take. He likes to kind of correlate it with the cylinder head flow. He's got my MagnaFlow exhaust for my a Terminator Cobra. I do like those. All I want to do is tear up the streets with an LS turbo. Then it must be tuned properly. Come on, Todd. Oh, that's what the poll should be. Should Todd take the square body out and shred the streets of Sacramento? I think that might get 100%, right? The Schneider Cam company is not in Huntington Beach. I think that they're down in San Diego or somewhere. Mexico City's in the house. Had a very productive week on my 393. I like to hear that. Got my pistons yesterday. Block machine. Taking my pistons up so I can bore them. Did you ever use a girdle on a Turbo 302 build? On a 5-liter, yes. We have used a main girdle. But the thing is, the weakness in the block, the inherent weakness in the block, if that is a true thing, it splits from the top of the main webbing up toward the cam, and a girdle doesn't really help that. The GLH turbo was running good. I mean, all I did was drive it around. We haven't tuned it or run it on a dyno or anything yet. So, Chad, at Mo Party this past weekend, there were several GLH based rides, and it was awesome. They were racing on the autocross mostly, and theirs have the owners were stoked that you knew what they were. Yeah, they're cool, man. Are you coming back to Ohio? I will be going back to Ohio. I won't be painting it. The Car Farm guys will. Are they going to weld up, or just they're going to reduce the base circle probably on the camshafts? Everybody wants to tear up the streets. Wrong cam does it exist? It's not just because of induction methods, RPM induction size that makes ideal or mismatch, like having an overdriven 144 YN. But actually, in all honesty, that application, I would put a big camshaft in it. A 540 with a big camshaft would be the way to go with a small blower, because you would try to do everything that you could to make the NA power higher, because you're limited by the blower basically. But I agree, you can have the right cam or the wrong cam, not the right or wrong, just something that could work better, which is why I suggest the small cams on most of these turbo applications, so that you get good response and you can still make the power. You don't need a really big camshaft in that, because the only thing that you're going to end up doing is not making any more power, because the turbo ultimately is going to tell you what that is. But what you're going to do is just reduce the drivability and stuff. But maybe you want that chop, and so you're willing to trade that. That's all part of it. Just finished making the inner stage pipe on our compound turbo system. That sounds cool. Just need to get the oil drains and feeds and get them on the dyno. Richard, does the Holley ECM you use have built-in boost control? It does have the ability to do boost control. It has the ability to control an electronic boost controller, but we use a separate one normally because we have one that's already hooked up on the dyno. The one that we use is a TC1. But the Eric and Ish have used boost controllers on the Holley, but I don't think usually. Oh, maybe they did. They have used ones on the Holley too. I think when they were doing the guys from Holley, maybe Evan had a motor there that they were using the Holley on. Rob, thanks. I'm simulating the block splitting. I have an idea that combines a turbo exhaust manifolds and reducing the model frequency that splits the block. So how are you changing the frequency? Am I going to drive the Omni home? Probably not. It's probably going to be too nice to drive all the way home. Ricky, which is more important with cams, dynamics design? Are you talking about making sure that the cam is stable, or timing events? All of that is important. But when people are looking at what you're talking about, is designing a new cam profile or designing a custom camshaft. Most of the people that would be that my audience are guys that have are getting junkyard kind of motors and low dollar kinds of things that, like with an LS, you're just putting a camshaft in. And quite honestly, I wouldn't ever suggest that they put a custom camshaft in it unless you're going to like do serious drag racing and you're running 8,000 or 8,500 RPM. I would never suggest a custom cam. The reason for that is most of these guys are looking at the 600 to 1,000 horsepower range. And all of that, making that power is all very, very easy with any of hundreds and hundreds of off-the-shelf cams. But all of those things are important when if you're actually a cam designer and you want to make sure that your cam works, which is why I like the guys at BTR so much, is they spend a lot of time developing stuff on the Spintron and finding out which ones have balance and loft and all of that. And it's pretty cool stuff. Why aren't you watching Drag Week right now? Is that on? Overbuilt. I missed why the Omni was out there. The project for the Omni was to take the car out to the car farm. We wanted to put in a complete bone stock T2 swap so that I could bring it back and get it, go through a ref station here in California, get it emissions legal and registered and driving with a T2. I wanted an intercooled version and I wanted it legal for driving in California because that's part of the project. And while it was there, Brian painted the engine compartment and it turned out so nice that now everything else has to be that nice. So it's, as they always do, it turned from something fairly simple into a very elaborate pseudo restoration. So Chad, you're up for driving it home? Ran a U-Haul box truck to stuff it in and drive it home. Dude, you should have been there, man. I did some pretty epic stints on the drive. My longest one was 1,450 miles just with just gas stops. So I drove from the far side. It was a small town in Wyoming, and I wanted to, because I needed to stage my stops so that I could stop and I wanted to go visit a fireworks stand. And then I started driving, and as I was driving, I'm like, hey, I'm gaining hours at a time here because I'm going through two timelines or time zones. And so there was just more hours driving, and I'm like, I'm not stopping, I'm not stopping in Tahoe or even Wendover or whatever. I'm too close. So I just kept driving all the way through. So it was like 22 hours or something like that. You're a little delirious toward the end, but it's all good. The original idea was to get the engine and get it running and just make it all work. And then I would fly out there and drive it back. But now it's going to be, I think, really, really nice. So if I have a large NA cam and a 6-liter and Ed boost, the biggest trade-off will be drivability. Yeah, the thing is with your camshaft for a turbo application, to make big power with a turbo, you don't need a big camshaft. You can, and you'll get there at a lower boost level, but you don't need that cam. So you can put a smaller cam in, which will drive nicer and idle better and probably get better mileage. You can have that. That's a nice thing about a turbo, and then have all the turbo power that you want. You don't need the gigantic NA camshaft in there. Not that an NA cam won't work. It absolutely will. In fact, I would pick another smaller NA cam over a turbo cam. It will work. It's just that you're picking the camshaft not for turbo versus non-turbo. You're picking the camshaft for other things like idle and drivability and fuel mileage. And then the turbo just gives you all the power that you want. A custom cam is a lot more than a shelf cam. Model frequency and is the thing about a custom cam is it's 100% unnecessary for this range of power. There's nothing that a custom cam is going to do in this power range for an LS that I could just walk over and close my eyes and pick any off-the-shelf cam and put it in there. And with the 750 horsepower turbo, it will make 750 horsepower. Basically, it ties the block and heads and exhaust together. If I would do a custom cam, if I were building a dedicated kind of race motor. Model frequency, basically it ties the heads, block, and exhaust together. Using simulation software, I can see the weak points in the block. Okay. Yeah, where do we stop? That's the thing. As soon as he's like, well, let's just clean before we put the engine in, let's just clean the engine bay. So we took and degreased everything and cleaned it all off. And then we're like, well, you know, let's just paint it. Okay, well, let's scuff everything with Scotch-Brite or sanding paper or whatever. And then we took all the, you know, parts off for the cowl area and disconnected all the things in the engine bay and cleaned it all up and sanded it up. And then he painted it. And I'm like, oh, that looks really good. And then he put clear over it. I'm like, oh man, that's way too nice. I didn't even want to put an engine in there because I didn't want to scratch the new paint. But it looked really good. And so now it's everything. Like, okay, now and it's Santa Fe blue. So now all the rest of the car has to be that Santa Fe blue. Now, if you're going to do that, you have to do all the trim has to be redone in black, the bumper, the grills, all that stuff. We have to replace. Then you replace all the rubber things because those are broken up, like the according sections that are the bumper covers. Yeah, and then it's just everything. Okay, now it needs GLHS wheels. It obviously needs new tires. Well, since we're going to take the motor back out, because we're going to put a good clutch, pressure plate, flywheel assembly on there, fix a leak that's back in the back. Since we're going to do that, Brian wants to. Okay, well, I'm going to take the K member out, and we're going to fix the K member because there are some things that are going on with that. So it's all, you know. But I'm going to have an awesome little Omni when it's all done, so it'll be cool. What's your Turner? Can you rephrase your question? And then for everybody out there, don't use the word thoughts. That's one of my pet peeves. I have others too, but don't use the word thoughts. It's an open-ended question, and I can't answer essay questions. That's like somebody walking up to you and say, "What are your thoughts on the Civil War?" Well, how much time do you have? Is that a good carburetor, or does it work under boost, or those kinds of things? Don't use the word thoughts. Jet engine nerd doing car stuff. That's perfect. Those are the kinds of people that we want in the industry because you have a different viewpoint. I like people with different viewpoints. I have a 406 gap for 400 shot, but spray 200. It's 11-to-1. Kind of go blower on 93. 11-to-1. My guess is it probably has a big camshaft in it because just like with a turbo, when you're running nitrous, I recommend when guys are putting nitrous combinations together that they run a really big camshaft because with nitrous, you're trying to get to a power level. So you can do that a number of ways. One is that, and we talked about this with the turbo thing previously, is I like to try to maximize my naturally aspirated output before I add nitrous. Because if you're going to add a 200 shot, it's much better to add a 200 shot to a motor that already makes 500 than a motor that only makes 400, or 6 or 8 or whatever your starting number is. So if you can get your NA power number up, when you add 200 to that, you're going to get to a higher number. So that's the logic behind that. So a lot of times the nitrous motors will have, big camshafts in them and lots of head flow, which is always good. Intake manifold, just everything that you could do to improve the power output of your naturally aspirated combination and then add it. If you have 11-to-1 with a big camshaft, you're not going to have, your dynamic compression is going to be lower, so you probably can run it. I wouldn't run that combination with a blower on 93. You can, you're just going to have to take away a pretty fair bit of timing. Rocky River. What was your question? Oh yeah. The trade-off will be drivability. If you're drag racing and you have a high stall speed and you have gear and stuff, and you are taking advantage of the RPM range, because that's the other thing that happens with drag racing. It might be that a bigger camshaft will help you because now you're running more engine speed, which is a lot of times beneficial on a just dedicated drag race kind of deal. I worked on the SR71 engines. Are you? I'm taking it that you're not in your 20s or 30s. Richard, it needs all that done. Sounds like the Omni will be right instead of just working on it. Yeah, it'll be all right, and it will be a GLH swapped combination into a GLHT, which is kind of cool. Are you going to give the Omni away? No. Are you using the David Vizard head on your 2.2 build? Couple things. First of all, that head is not done, and also I'm not doing a 2.2 build. What I'm doing is 2.2 and 2.5 testing. So I'm not putting together one combination that makes a lot of power. What I'm putting together is 40 or 50 different combinations, because I'm going to test 5 or 6 different heads. I'm going to test 4 or 5 different cylinder heads, or 4 or 5 different cylinder heads, 4 or 5 or 6 different camshafts, 3 or 4 or 5 different intake manifolds, 3 or 4 or 5 different turbos, different intercoolers, different injectors, different, all of it. I want to show what all of these things do. So I'm not doing a build of a motor to try to make lots of power. I know that for a lot of people, that's really difficult for them to grasp. And that's one of the many comments that I get too. Oh, that's obviously the wrong cam and the wrong turbo and the wrong combination. You can make a lot more power than that. Again, what they don't realize is that their way of thinking is that let's build as much power as we can. My build is going to be, it's build and then lots of power. That's not what I do. What I do is show you what happens when you take a stock cam and then put this other cam in and put this other cam in and put this other cam in. And then what happens to the boost curve when I go from a stock turbo to a turbo now that's capable of making, instead of 300 horsepower, that's capable of making 500 horsepower. How much did we sacrifice down low for what we could potentially get at the top? What happens when I run an air-to-air intercooler versus an air-to-water and then ice water? And then what happens when I run nitrous on the big turbo? All of that stuff, so that people get more and more information. Me just doing a build doesn't give them that information. Me doing endless dyno testing gives them a lot more information. But I am looking forward to using David's head if he gets it done. We are going to be testing a number of ported heads. I picked up a 224 230 600 lift for my 5.3 for $200. That's a good cam. Do you think you could make big power with multiple lawnmower cams? Well, it would depend on how many of them that you had, because the power output is just the flow rate, and then you have to, once you have the flow rate, then you have to get the because like if you look at the thumbnail, it's the 292 inline 6-cylinder with a 1-barrel carburetor intake manifold, and then we adapted to a 2-barrel, and then we adapted to a 4-barrel, and then we adapted from a 4150 4-barrel to a 4500 Dominator 4. So we have a 4500 carburetor sitting on top of a 1-barrel opening. So if you can, I don't know what a lawnmower carburetor flows, not very much, I'm assuming. So you'd need 8 or 10 or 20 of them to get the amount of airflow that you'd need to make whatever power output you have to make. And then the thing that you'd have to deal with is, am I getting the right amount of fuel to go with that airflow? And then can I put all of that on some kind of intake manifold that will actually make power? Who? Felt the old 650 Demon hit harder, struggling to get off an idle hesitation on the FST 750. It wouldn't surprise me that the smaller carburetor is a better street carburetor. We see that a lot when we run carburetors on the engine dyno. We're doing a wide open throttle thing. It's all we have to do is get them to wide open throttle at whatever our lowest point is. And so it's not a transition thing, which it definitely is on the street and on the chassis dyno and at the drag strip. So that's a different thing. So getting that to work is a different deal than going to wide open throttle and just letting it run through wide open throttle. Usually what happens is a bigger carburetor. If let's say we have a 400 horsepower 302, we run a 650 on it, which is probably the right carburetor for that application. Then we put a 750 on it, and the 750 might make 8 or 10 more horsepower. But will it be the better choice on the street? That's the decision that you have to make, going from, yes, I want that dyno power, but is that actually better at the street or the strip? It then takes some tuning to get transition circuitry right, which we can do on the engine dyno. Brule's really good at that, and being around him for years and years, obviously some of that stuff rubs off. So getting the transition circuitry, we can kind of tell how it will transition, and it usually is pretty good. But that's the struggle with going to a bigger carburetor. A lot of times we can make more peak power, but does that like translate to something on the street or at the track? Rear mount on a crew cab. How far back in the charge tube should the water injection be placed? Is it better further back to give it time to vaporize? I would be worried on a rear mount. I would be worried about it puddling in the tube. I would put it up close to the intake manifold. Transport. I don't know the answer to your question. I have a set of steel, a billet H-beam rods for my 1.6 Suzuki. Which way should the piston oil jets on the rod space? Spray the piston before the power stroke or after? How is the jet aimed? Is it straight up from? I'm having trouble visualizing this. Is the jet's going to spray the underside of the dome, right? Is there angle to the spray? Will the 2.2 bolt to the trans from a later 2-liter or 2.4? I don't know. I don't know if that if the trans from the SRT pattern is the same. Where are the SR-71s still in service? I know that NASA was using them for a while after the program stopped, but I don't know if they still are. How strict are the sound ordinances in California? Yeah, you can pull over for a loud exhaust, especially if you're using the loudness. But I haven't seen anybody get pulled over for loud exhausts that are driving around. When's my next trip to West Tech? I should be going down there pretty soon. You're still here? That's right. It's okay to turn this off and go to sleep. No, I'll sleep when I get old. The first gen RT Neons have a different gear set and the trans a closer ratio. I'm not, for the Omni, I'm not interested in a different gear set. The factory transmissions that are available for the Omni have different gear sets in them also. The different transmissions, 568, 523 to 525. I'm getting all neon guy now, or Omni guy. I'm not sure what it is, just inspecting and discovered the cooling jets. So how's our poll doing here? Should I do a big bang on the early 2.2-liter Dodge turbo motor with a small head bolts? Only 67% are saying yes. I'm kind of surprised about that. Richard and folks listening to the new Space Force song. I'm not familiar with that. A Starship Troopers remix. Richard used to go to the Reno air races with an engineer from Lockheed Skunk Works. He designed the Alons on the SR-71. That would be very cool to have. That'd be somebody cool to sit next to. Yeah, I'm not overbuilt. I'm not hip on all of the Space Force songs. Too busy working, man. Excuse me. This caliber of knowledge used to involve libraries and crotchety old men. I'm on my way there. Yeah, I do like libraries or librarians. The only time I ever saw him get excited is when they had an SR-71 flyby at Reno. I know, Dan. When I went there, that's the first thing that when I walked up to my friend Bernie, I'm like, okay, I'm here. I'm here for the first time. Where is the line where I get to go for a ride in an SR-71? I'm ready to go wait in that line. I'll even wait if it's long, like Disneyland long. I'll go wait in that line. Can annular boosters be adapted to many of the Hollies? I think that they probably already have Hollies that have annular boosters. Different carb families that have that already. How'd you get into engine building and testing? It kind of happened by accident. I've told that story before where I got a degree in marketing and advertising. And instead of doing that, I decided that I was going to go into the not at all lucrative world of automotive journalism, because I went out to a Silver State race and they were doing a story and my car was in one of the stories because it was for Turbo Magazine. And the guy doing the story, Kip, the editor, publisher of Turbo Magazine, was a Mustang guy. And so he had this guy doing, and I called him up and said, hey, this guy was out here doing the story. When is the story coming out? And he asked me basically to add some stuff to the story. And that's how it all happened. And then I just went down that path. Can an engine dyno be used in different modes? Yes, you can vary the rate of acceleration from 50 RPM per second to, I don't know, 15 or 1600 RPM. You can do a steady state load. I don't know about varying throttle. Usually you position the throttle at one spot, but you can do it at 50%. You can do it at 25%. You can do it at 100%. T, so you ordered your first Neon after seeing a Super Bowl commercial? See, that's effective marketing for them. Kazi SR-71s. Those are, I think those are still in service. Referring to the survey, you should do a big bang on all of the engines. I'm really grateful that you got into this line of work as opposed to being rich. I kind of wish I would have went the other way. There were some very lean years. Having to wait for that, and that was the thing about the automotive journalism deal, is that I'm a hard worker, so I don't mind working hard and long hours and all that. That's part of my makeup. But when other people don't follow through when you do your part, that's a frustrating deal. That's one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing now with YouTube. I'm really glad that I finally decided to listen to the people that were telling me you need to have a YouTube channel for a dozen years or so, or at least 10. I finally listened to them because I was doing my thing. It's the thing that I knew. I was a writer. I was a automotive journalist guy. And I shouldn't have been doing that, because the problem is that I would do my work and turn my work in, and then then it was a fight just to get paid for it. So it was not a good deal. On my Turbo Mustang stock block, how would you run the timing? Do you have a standalone ECU? I mean, or is it a A9L, or what are you controlling it with? It was your destiny. I think density probably is a more apt term. When do stainless valves become an issue? You mean when are stainless valves necessary over the sodium valves? Since all you do is full throttle tuning, you should do a cross of what you do with Cletus and do different engine burnouts and big bangs. That's all for the youth who will watch and make you the money. Yeah, I'm not just doing this. Obviously, what I'm doing on this channel is not for money. I mean, that's how I make a living, but I'm not doing it I'm not going to go light myself on fire just so it will get 1 million views. That's not the thing. I'm also helping the industry. Hopefully I'm providing information that helps other people make decisions about how they can save money and do the things that they need to do and get the power goals that they need to make. I'm showing people what works. And I think that that's important. So Scott, you want a 600 horsepower at the tire, Kazi big block Ford? That's a pretty easy number to come by. What's the most watched video? Well, right now I have a race going on, and I think that the Boss 302 versus the DZ 302. So if you haven't watched that video, go watch it. For all the people that are watching this video, if you haven't watched that video, go check it out. That one is now taking the lead. For the longest time, when I first started, it was oddly enough. This is an interesting story. The one that had the most views was a remake of one that I did originally. It was very short. It was when I kind of first started YouTube and didn't have any idea what it was or how to do it. I did a quick video on putting the supercharger on the little V6 motor, and it got like a few hundred views. I redid that one and gave it a cool name, Stormbreaker, which is about when the Avengers movie with Thor had come out. And did a new video of it, more elaborate and showed more stuff. And that video was the #1. And then I did a video on, and sometimes this just happens by accident that you get these things where it just takes off. The video that I did on the low buck blower, the Cadillac blower thing, was a pretty good one. But Stormbreaker was the #1. And then I did the one on how to maximize 6-liter performance, which I thought was another kind of throw together thing. But that one now is 640,000 views, I think. But the one that's catching it, and I think is going to pass it here any day now, if it hasn't already, is the Boss 302 versus the DZ 302. And it's odd, if you look at the analytics on the channel, you'll see that when you post a video, the numbers go up really rapidly, and then it just kind of levels off. Or in the case of that 6-liter video, it has a climbing curve. Basically, it's just going up at a certain level. It seems fairly consistent. And the same thing with the Boss video is it went up and kind of leveled off. And then every once in a while, you get these like VTEC jumps where all of a sudden people will discover it and go, oh, look, I need to watch this. So for a month or 2 or 3 or whatever, the numbers will come up dramatically. Like just recently, it came up a couple 100,000 views in a very short period of time. So it just ramps up. It just has this like little VTEC step where the views jump up. And this particular video seems to be very, very popular. And so guys are watching it a lot. And now it has, like I said, I think has now surpassed the other one. We'll see. And Boss 302s and DZ 302s are kind of awesomely cool anyway. Boss 302 4-bolt turbo video. So I need to do a Boss. But the thing is, and I could, but Boss 302s are really, really hard to come by. In fact, mine wasn't a real Boss 302. It was a late model 5-liter block that we put Boss 302 pistons and rods. The crank wasn't the Boss 302 crank, but it did have Boss 302 heads and a Holman and Moody, actually original Boss 302 intake. Thank you to the guys at Holman and Moody who sent that out and loaned that to me, because obviously I can't afford stuff like that. To duplicate an original Boss 302 cam and stuff, to simulate the kind of power that these things made. But putting a turbo on that is going to do exactly, it's going to be our NA starting point, and then we're going to add boost, whether that's a Boss or a Coyote or an Atlas or a J Series Honda or whatever it is. It's just going to do that. Lots of people think that, and maybe it would get a lot of views, but again, that's not really why I do it. Boss 302 heads, I borrowed those from John Mahovitz, had some. Are the MLS exhaust gaskets on the LS reusable? Infinitely. We have used, all we have are junkyard sets at West Tech that we reuse over and over and over again. Cross Boss intake, I have videos up on that. The guys at West Tech have a customer that has run a couple of those, and they work really well. It made really good power. I love the way the intake looks. I love the way the carburation looks. They are super cool. It also takes a lot of time and money. It has multiple cans and intakes and etc. on the dyno for multiple days. It's a lot. Michael, when would an Inconel exhaust valve be necessary or beneficial over a stainless valve? It's necessary if you're running boost for extended periods of time. And it's necessary if you're running a given temperature, but I don't know what that temperature crossover is going to be, because it's going to not just be temperature, it's going to be temperature and time. Inconel exhaust valves are a good idea. Have I thought about doing a Subaru or Audi engines? I think about doing every engine, but the logistics of doing other engines are problematic. Having to build, it's very time consuming and expensive to build bell housings and adapters and things to run those, and then making an ECU work with whatever trigger patterns and things that they have. So it's problematic. So we're going to close out our poll here. 67% saying yes, do a big bang on the disposable 84 motor, although this one's going to kind of be rebuilt. So I'm going to start to like feel a fondness for it. A stainless valve is certainly stronger than a non-stainless valve. But for the exhaust, an Inconel valve, especially on a turbo application, is definitely the way to go. I've heard that the VK35 engines can't handle a lot of power. I've never run one, so I can't comment on that. Yeah, definitely a bunch of different stainless combinations. We see that in exhaust systems too. Some of the stainless exhaust systems are so less stainless that they're magnetic. To me, Cleveland heads were much better. They are better than the Windsor heads, definitely. But I don't think that they would. They probably weren't very emissions friendly. Uh-oh, bots have entered the chat. Are head studs overkill for the Dodge motor build? Are you talking about the 2.2 dyno testing? No, head studs are definitely a good idea. I have head studs on the one in the Omni. Head studs are always a good idea. That's how you know you've made it. That's right. I got bots. 321 stainless is good for exhaust work with turbos. Next step up would be in-canal exhaust. Yeah. I think probably race motors would be. Do any factory ones have in-canal exhaust valves? Can you share the timing curve on the 302 block splitting video? I don't know what it is. I'd have to go back and look and see. I don't think we have the, I don't know if we even have the file of that from the curve anymore. Otherwise, yes, the timing curve is very, it's not proprietary. Neither are cam specs, neither are anything that I do. Any bets on the boost number before the 2.2 blows? It depends on which one you're talking about. I have a 2.2 and I have a 2.5. And because this is an early one and it has the small head bolts on it, I don't know that there are ARP studs for those smaller ones. And I don't think that that block, I'm still waiting to find out if that block has been, I thought we were going to drill and tap it for the bigger head studs. Forcing myself to do a master cylinder and wheel cylinders on the 62 Fairlane. Probably a good idea. Yeah, I hope that all works out. Yeah, a titanium exhaust valve, probably not a good way to go. And less necessary, I would argue, because of the valve sizing. Richard, I sent you an email on my Quad 4. See what you think of my offer. Cool. I'll check it out, Dave. Rob, are you on a 5-liter Mustang? If it's a turbo, how much boost are you running on it? Because 15 degrees would be really, really low for a 5-liter. Because most 5-liter Fords with even an aftermarket head are going to be around 35 degrees total timing for an NA application. So 15 would be, well, maybe 15, I guess, if you're running pump gas on it. Pretty high on the 2.2. A friend of mine was hitting 25 pounds on 93 octane. God, that must have like 0 timing in it to be able to do that. Yeah, the last trip I took, I had to skip the stop sign. That's the thing. If you have an old classic kind of car, you definitely want the brakes working on it. 8 pounds on heads cam and intake. Yeah, I think you're way, and I'm sure it's intercooled. And is it? Did you say that it was pump gas? I think we would be closer to probably 20 degrees at a reasonable amount of boost on that. What heads are there? Do you still have the stock heads on it that you've ported? Tom, it didn't live long. Yeah. And that's the thing is with the 2.2 stuff, unless you have a decent sized cam in there and a ported head, running lots of boost becomes counterproductive, I would think, at some point. Doesn't total timing have more to do with the combustion chamber efficiency and compression? Yes, but having run hundreds and hundreds of 5-liter Fords with different 20 or 30 different kinds of heads on them, that tends to be where they want to be in total timing NA. And then the amount of timing that you would run under boost is a function of that starting point, just like your power output is a function of the NA starting point. If a cylinder head wants 35 degrees of timing NA to make best power, then your boost timing is going to be subtracted from that. If, like on an LS, the cylinder head wants 29 degrees of timing, you are going to subtract from that. And so if you subtract the same amount, the one that has lower timing NA is also going to have lower timing under boost. One more minute. Yeah, 33 degrees NA. That seems like a reasonable number. Oh, Dan, cool. You're going to go over Porto. What is it called? I've watched lots of videos on the big waves over there. The ones in Portugal. Nazaré, I think it is. Yeah. Car made 350 wheel horsepower, Shelby CSX. They have guys doing 600 at the tire with some of these things. And they got guys going 9s with them with 8-valve motors, which is pretty impressive. Yeah, I don't know about the spelling on Nazaré. I think that there's an I in it. But the waves are just ridiculous there. I just caught the end, wrong cam, wrong car. Were we talking SCCA race cars that were sold for street use? My 69 Z28. No, we're not talking about that. But your 69 Z28, if it had a DZ302 in it, I have lots of videos up on that. Yeah, 100 footers. That's that's nuts. Yeah, it is bigger than Mavericks. Mavericks is really big, but not like that. Tom, happy to help. And on that note, it's time to go. I got more stuff to do. We can't sit here and talk about Mavericks the whole day. Thank you guys all for showing up. I got a video that I'm working on right after this. I'm going to go pull those cams out and get them ready to ship. And then obviously I'll be back on tonight. So we'll see you guys tonight. Over the top.